My name is Jason Schillerstrom, and I'm an assistant professor of psychiatry at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. One of the docs on faculty here. I work in the Division of Aging and Geriatrics. And for probably a key part of my job is doing decision-making capacity evaluations for clients and their families. And then I also work very closely with Adult Protective Services. Once a week, I go out with Adult Protective Services and do decision-making capacity evaluations for their clients. And so today we're going to talk about decisional assessments. We'll initially describe what is incapacity, and there is a legal definition for incapacity. We'll talk about the challenge of doing functional status assessments when we're assessing for capacity. We'll talk about the relationship between cognition and capacity, and then we'll look at the consequences of incapacity. What can we do if someone doesn't have decisional capacity? And so, beginning, we'll talk about what is decision-making capacity. So commonly, I'll get questions like, is it safe for my mother to live at home? Can she live by herself? Can Dad still drive? These are common questions that I get asked in my geriatric psychiatry clinic, and these are tough questions to answer. For incapacity, the state there's a legal definition of incapacity in the state of Texas, and the legal definition is because of a physical or mental condition a person is unable to provide food, clothing, or shelter, attend to physical needs, or manage financial affairs. So this is the legal definition of incapacity. So a person in Texas would be considered to have decisional incapacity if, because of a physical or mental condition, they are unable to provide food, clothing, shelter, attend to their physical needs, or manage their finances. And so what's important in the definition are the verbs. And so it's provide, attend, manage. And so sometimes people will say, well, they have food. Okay, this person has food, and so maybe they don't have decisional incapacity. Maybe they're okay. Or they'll say, well, neighbors bring them food. And that happens quite commonly, where neighbors will be bringing a loved one food or clothing. And then it's implied within the definition that these are safe. So they have to not only provide food, but they have to provide safe food. Just as with shelter, they have to provide safe shelter. So we wouldn't say that someone's able to provide shelter because they can find a bridge to hover under, right? Or they're able to provide shelter because they do have a roof over their head. Never mind that the water isn't on, the electricity isn't on, the sewage isn't working. It's either rat or cat infested, and so it has to be safe shelter, safe food, safe clothing. And with clothing, the example would be, it's not do they have clothes, it's are the clothes safe. So they can't just be dressed in rags, for example. And the same with attend to physical needs. And this has to do with, can they attend to their own medical care? Can they take their medications appropriately? Can they follow doctor's instructions? So when the doctor says, okay, you have diabetes, and you need to check your blood sugar before every meal and once before bed, are they able to manipulate the glucometer, and are they able to check their in this case, their blood sugars as suggested by the physician. And then finally, again, managing finances. It's not, do they have money in a bank account? It's, are they really managing their money? Are they paying the bills? Do they know how much money's coming in? Do they know how much money's going out? And so the key is in the definition is really the verbs. And so that is the definition of being decisionally incapacitated. If because of a physical or mental condition, they're unable to provide these things, attend to physical needs, or manage finances. For physical conditions, in my clinic, because I'm a geriatric psychiatrist, we're always looking at the mental condition. And in general, what we're trying to decide is, do they have incapacity because of a dementia or even because of a depression? And so in my setting as a geriatric psychiatrist, I'm trying to decide, are they not attending to their needs because of a mental condition? And in almost every case, it's because of a dementia or a mood disorder. Sometimes I'll get cases where the person might have schizophrenia. And so they're not going outside of the house to go buy food, for example, because they're afraid that someone is stalking them, and they're not getting their food because they have these profound paranoias. So that might be an example of a non-dementia case. But in general, I'm trying to when I do these capacity assessments, is it because of dementia? And so that's the definition. So then that brings us down to how do we determine if they're able to provide food, clothing, shelter, attend to physical needs, or manage their finances? And so how do we determine this? And this brings us to the idea of doing functional assessments. And so you can ask yourself, what might be the best way to assess functional abilities? And there's 4 general ways that functional abilities are assessed. So the first is self-report. The first we'll talk about is self-report. So one way to assess functional status is to ask the person what they're able to do. And you can imagine how this might go. So we might be asking a 75-year-old man with moderate Alzheimer's disease, can you drive? And he might say, yes, I can. And so, and we might do it for driving. Can you manage your own medications? Yes, I can. Can you bathe and dress and do all this stuff for yourself? Yes, yes, yes. Or he might say, actually I can't, whatever it is. I can't, my daughter helps me with my medications. My daughter puts the pills in the pill box for me. So they don't always over-report, but a common problem with self-reported functional abilities is the idea that they do over-report their abilities. So self-report is nonetheless one way that we'll try and assess functional status. The other way we'll try to assess it is with proxy reports or caregiver reports. And so we won't ask, in this example, the 75-year-old man with Alzheimer's disease, if he can drive. We'll ask his daughter. And so we might ask his daughter, can your dad safely drive a car? And then we'll see what her answer is, and it might be yes or it might be no. And we'll do this for each of the different functional impairments. The challenge with proxy reports is the idea of caregiver burden. And so what commonly happens with caregiver burden is that the person reporting the disability will say, will get statements like, they can't do anything. I have to do everything. I have to bathe him, dress him, I have to drive him, I have to do it all. And so because of caregiver burden issues, where the caregiver develops this depressive state, they might over-report the true disability of the client. Perhaps the client really can dress himself, or he can cook a meal, who knows what it is. But because the daughter is doing so much, or the son is doing so much, or whoever the caregiver is doing so much, we'll get these comments of, I have to do it all. So proxy reports are one way. The other way we will try and assess functional status is with performance-based.